A very fine good evening to one and all. Today, we have the Information Bureau of Government Medical College Kozhikode presenting to you the first session of COVID integrated series. Today, we have with us Dr. Mini Ma'am, Additional Professor, Department of Microbiology. Hearty welcome to you, ma'am. In this first
Okay,
session of the COVID integrated series, we'll be dealing with the COVID 19 lab diagnosis and infection control. Thank you, and over to you, ma'am.
okay. Thank you, Fiona. Uh, Really a pleasant platform to speak to you all about this information on COVID-19 diagnostic test. Right now, India is presently battling an aggressive wave of COVID-19 pandemic, and we are all in a ready battle in order to that we are all doing in our laboratory is many in number. So let me first introduce or give an introduction on this virus, that is SARS-CoV-2, which is the causative agent of this great pandemic, which has started in Wuhan, China, Hubei province since 2020. It started in 2019. So SARS-CoV-2, which is enveloped a single-stranded RNA virus, which belongs to the family Coronaviridae of the genus Beta coronaviruses. All the coronaviruses, they share similarities in the organization and expression of their genomes. So in the diagnosis of COVID-19, the proteins or the structural proteins which are targeted, which the genes targeted are the E gene, that is the envelope gene, the N gene, then the RDRP, that is RNA dependent DNA polymerase, S gene, then open reading frame 1AB. So these are the genes that are targeted in order to make a diagnosis of COVID-19. The diagnosis is done. Why the diagnosis is done? In order to manage the pandemic, we have to contain the disease or to reduce the transmission of the virus, and also to reduce the mortality of the spreading the disease, mortality, to reduce the mortality. Now, the tests that are available are the direct test and the indirect test. The first and foremost, that is the gold standard test, is the RT-PCR. So the direct test will be the presence of the virus, where you detect the virus or the virus particles. The genes are detected. Here, PCR, that is the RT-PCR, CBNAT, TrueNAT, then the antigen detection test, that is the rapid antigen test, that is the RAT. The indirect test is the antibody detection test, which is used only for the surveillance purpose. The nucleic acid amplification test, NAT, we have the real-time RT-PCR, which is the gold standard test, which is being done regularly for diagnosis. The TrueNAT, which is the point-of-care test, the cartridge-based CBNAT, that is a gene expert. So these are the nucleic acid amplification tests which are done regularly. Now, in order to diagnose, we need to know about the dynamicity of the disease. For knowing the dynamicity of the disease, it is divided into different phases. 0 to 5 days, which can be asymptomatic, or 5 to 14 days, which is a symptomatic, that is a crucial phase. Then comes the 14 to 21 days, that is a decline phase. 21 to 28 days, that is a convalescent phase. Remember, these phases or these days may vary accordingly, or may sometimes be just like the same asymptomatic, symptomatic, decline phase and convalescent. This need not be always regular in the same aspect. since there may be changes according to the clinical status of the patient. So looking at the markers, viral markers, the viral RNA, you can see the initial phase, that is the window period, then the asymptomatic phase, then the decline phase, and the convalescent phase. You can see as 4 different phases. Yellow phase is the convalescent phase. Here, the viral markers, the viral RNA remains detectable for a median period of 21 days after the onset of symptoms, and the infectivity declines significantly after 8 days. That means even if the RT-PCR remains positive, say for 21 days, it doesn't mean that the virus could be infective. The infectivity could wane after 8 days. But again, here also the symptomatology and the detecting means may vary according to the clinical features of the patient. Sometimes the patient may be asymptomatic wherein the RT-PCR may be positive. So these are in general, the viral markers wherein the viral RNA being detectable, say for a median period of 21 days. So in order to make a diagnosis, we need to collect the sample. The sample collection is usually the nasopharyngeal by using a nasopharyngeal swabs. The upper respiratory samples are collected. Also the lower respiratory tract specimen, which will give you high viral load. So for collecting the sample, the person collecting the sample should be present in full personal protective equipment. That is to avoid the cough or any droplets that is spread from the patient. So the specimen should be of a good quality one, and the time and duration of the illness of the specimen collection is very important, that which may give you false positive or false negative test if the samples collected if not in the right time. And the swab has to be rotated 180 degrees. You have to leave the swab there for 5 to 10 seconds. It should be saturated with secretions. I told you the lower respiratory tract specimens give you a high viral load. Also, an oropharyngeal swab also can be taken for testing. Transporter specimens, the specimen which is collected, that is the nasopharyngeal swab that is collected, it is transported in a VTM, that is a viral transport medium. In case of delay, it can be stored at say 2 to 8 degrees for 72 hours. If more than 72 hours delay, it can be stored as minus 70 degrees. And false negative RT-PCR if it is not stored or adequately stored or not transported in a viral transport medium. So the specimen which is transported, it is subject to the RT-PCR, which is the gold standard test for detecting COVID-19. Do 96 samples. And for doing the RT-PCR, a specific lab setting is required with a proper biosafety and biosecurity precautions. And the turnaround time, it may require say even 20 possible the result can be obtained. And accuracy of detection, earlier ICMR advised the results to be, the test to be done in severe acute respiratory infections and in ICU. But now RT-PCR test is done for many other requirements, that is for admitting a case or for admitting patients. The guidelines have now changed. The testing guidelines for RT-PCR, that is whenever a patient is symptomatic, in a symptomatic period, SARI, that is severe acute respiratory infection, as early as possible, this test has to be done. So initially it was done for international and interstate traveler in the last 14 days. It is always done in a symptomatic contact of a lab confirmed or quarantine. Symptomatic healthcare worker or other frontline workers, RT-PCR is done. Also for elective surgeries. It is done in COVID suspects cases who test RAT negative, that is rapid antigen test negative, should be tested sequentially by RT-PCR. Now the other test that is done, POC, point of care test, that is a rapid PCR, wherein the test is obtained very soon, say within 45 minutes you get the results. That is a gene expert SARS-CoV, express SARS-CoV. This for this test, it is NABL and ICMR accreditation is needed. Here again, the nasopharyngeal swab is taken in a viral transport medium, 3 ml viral transport medium. Here, the E and N gene is detected. That is the envelope gene and the N gene. There are the spikes protein. So E gene is common for all the coronaviruses, whereas the RDRP, the other genes are particularly specific for the corona COVID-19. And this is used both for screening and confirmatory. Here, CB-NAT results, positive results are considered as true positive. You can consider the positive result as true positive. So this is the CB-NAT machine. That is a nucleic acid amplification test. This is a very simple cartridge-based test. The machine is a very small one, which can be carried on to point of care place. And here, this is a rapid real-time RT-PCR test, which is a cartridge-based test. It is fully automated. In RT-PCR, you need initial extraction, wherein the elute is kept for running PCR. But here the cartridge-based test, it is fully automated. That means automates and integrates sample preparation. Here, the nucleic acid extraction, amplification, and detection of the sequences, target sequences is done by the machine itself. The CB-NAT itself does all the extraction, amplification, everything. That's why it's called the fully automated. But here, there is a single-use disposable cartridges are used, wherein you can use very few samples alone can be done. And also the cross-contamination between samples is minimized, where because you use very few samples only need to be tested in this CB-NAT. And this is done for emergency surgeries where you need to have the results very soon as possible. And also for the bot dead cases, CB-NAT is advised. Then yet another test, that is the TrueNAT, which is a chip-based point of care test. Here, the machine, this is the machine which is used TrueNAT. This is a combo. Here, the chip-based real-time PCR test for coronavirus. This is a TrueNAT beta COVID test. Here, the test that done is it detects the E gene and RDRP gene. I told you RDRP, which is the RNA-dependent DNA polymerase test. Here, the combo. Initially, TrueNAT test, the E gene was detected. Later on, the RDRP gene was detected. Now we have a combo chip. There's a quick turnaround time. Will give you the results, say, within 30 to 60 minutes. Here, the nasopharyngeal swab is taken and it is put in a viral lysis buffer, which inactivates the virus. And again, here there's a closed platform wherein the results are obtained in a the TrueNAT machine. Here you can read the TrueNAT, the results in this machine here. The results are read here, whether for the presence of E gene or the RDRP gene. So this is done 1 to 2 days before elective surgery, TrueNAT, when you get the results very soon. The next test, which is very common, that is the rapid antigen test. This is a standard COVID-19 antigen kit, which is the rapid chromatographic immunoassay. This is for qualitative detection of specific antigens to SARS-CoV. Here you can say whether the test is positive or negative. And negative test will have to be confirmed by an RT-PCR test. So rapid antigen test, this is early detection of infection and for quick containment. This test, I told you, it's of moderate sensitivity but high specificity. That means if the test is positive, it is true positive, and moderate sensitivity. If it is a negative test, you need to do a repeat test. So true positive test considered true positive. All symptomatic individuals testing negative have to be confirmed with real-time PCR test. So how the test is done? The nasopharyngeal, the kit provided will contain the nasopharyngeal swab, or I told you the swab collecting personnel, full personal protective equipment, that is to prevent, and he has to stand in an offset position, that is to prevent droplet infection occurring to the person who is taking the swab. So the extraction buffer, the tube, and it is put in a buffer tube which buffer inactivates the virus, wherein it is closed after the sample is put into it. Then it is pressed, that is apply the extracted specimen. 3 drops of the extracted specimen is added to the of the test device. After that, what you see is, say for a while, that is you can see a line at the C part and the T. That is, one is a test line and the other one is a control line. You can see if there is the marker, if you get both lines, you see that the test is said to be positive. So this ICMR has agreed the rat test is to be done in all containment zones identified by the state government, all central and state government medical colleges and government hospitals. But now this point of care test is done. It can be done anywhere. All private hospitals or the lab accredited by the NABH or NABL approved by the ICMR as COVID-19 facilities. And whenever this test is done, there should be a good hospital infection control committee with proper waste management facilities. The samples which are taken are to be discarded with proper care. That is why a good HICC and waste management facility should be available where these tests are done. Now, guidelines for testing rat. This was earlier given. That is, the person who is having the influenza-like infection or in a who is not a COVID suspect, and also in symptomatic patients, and also done in antenatal, immediate postnatal, also in person with severe comorbidities. So now rat is done wherever it is indicated. Now, asymptomatic high-risk primary contact, that is 8 days from the last contact. Also, follow-up samples of COVID positive patients as per the guidelines. Now, the guidelines are, we have to update the guidelines accordingly. The testing guidelines have to be updated accordingly. Now, next is the antibody test, which is the indirect test. So, this antibody test is done for surveillance purposes. Here, the immune response against viral products are detected, and this is always for seroprevalence study. This is of great value in epidemiological studies of SARS-CoV-2 virus pandemic. And you all know that the individual immune response following the SARS-CoV-2 varies, and it varies. So the different tests with different assay forms, also with different manufacturers. Here, the anti-SARS-CoV-2 immunoassay for in vitro qualitative detection of antibody, IgG immunoglobulin, to SARS-CoV-2 in human serum and plasma. So the test, ELISA test is done also. CLIA, that is the electrochemiluminescence immunoassay tests are done. The why this test are of different varying tests, that is, a positive test indicates exposure when you have a positive antibody test, that is IgG present. When you have the IgG positivity test, which indicates exposure to SARS-CoV-2 and a possible immunity. In COVID-19, the time of appearance of IgG and IgM in relation to each other is variable. Usually, in any viral diseases, it is the IgM antibody which appears earlier and IgG which appears later. But in case of COVID-19, the time of appearance of relation to antibody types may be simultaneously. You may get both the antibodies simultaneously. Simultaneous appearance of this antibody is desirable. So the antibody test may not give you that you are immune to the disease. It is only a semi-quantitative test, which we may not give you the correct value, whether you are protected or not. Okay, so this is all about very mini lecture on this on this test, COVID test, which is done routinely. Okay, good evening. So once again, we are on to this discussion on COVID-19. As you all know, this is a second wave pandemic we are all facing, battling in order to prevent the infection or to control the pandemic which is on now. And this infection control practices, which is a cornerstone of any healthcare system. This is to give a basic information regarding the patient safety and the healthcare worker safety. So, infection prevention and control, as you know, it is the basis of any healthcare delivery system. And during this COVID-19 pandemic, we are all set ready for following certain standard precautions which are to be followed by each and every one of us, that is the healthcare worker in any healthcare system that we are working in. And one must know the definition of standard precaution. That is, standard precautions, they are the work practices which are followed by any healthcare worker. This is in order to prevent the transmission of infection from one person to another, and irrespective of the infectious state of the patient. So in standard precautions, the first and foremost is the hand hygiene. Hand hygiene has become the cornerstone of any infection control practices. The hand hygiene now, it has become a practice or the routine in our lives, because it has been practiced by each and every one of us nowadays. Hand hygiene includes hand rub, hand wash, and hand scrub. So hand washing is done. This was actually practiced long ago, that is 150 or many more years back, long ago. This was practiced, or this was the importance of hand washing was observed by the clinicians long ago. And it was Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian physician. He introduced the importance of hand hygiene to one and all. So the medical practitioners, they used to attend deliveries following, they used to attend autopsies following delivery. So there was a lot of death occurring, newborn death, or the mothers used to succumb due to puerperal sepsis. That is because they found that there was a cadaverous particle which would transmit infection from the hands of the healthcare worker. So it was Ignaz Semmelweis who insisted on the practice of hand hygiene and um, advised each one of the medical students to do it after attending any patient. It was not actually followed by them then. Later, when after his death, that is after, so he was also put to cell, stating that he was insane person. So after his death only, the healthcare workers or the doctors started realizing that how important hand hygiene was. After um, cleaning of hands, they attended patients. So there was a dramatic reduction in the death rate of mothers that who the preventing puerperal sepsis. So the hand hygiene technique forms the cornerstone of any infection prevention practices. And as you all know, the hands are the common vehicles of transmission of any infection from one person to another. So during this COVID scenario or during this pandemic, one has to keep in mind that hands are the proper means of vehicles of transmission of infection, and which is the one which has to be kept clean. So the the practice of infection prevention or the standard precautions by one and all is to be followed, that is to prevent not only the safety of the patient but also the other healthcare workers, also the family members, also the community, and all the any cadre of hospital, any cadre of hospital workers. The first, the so that is about hand hygiene. So for hand hygiene, hand wash is done when your hands are completely soiled or when there is a visible soiling of hands by any secretions or blood stains, sputum, or anything of that sort. We have to do a hand wash. And hand that is to be done in a running water. Soap and water has to be used for washing hands. As you all know, this coronavirus is an enveloped virus, enveloped RNA virus. It is easily destroyed by soap solution, soap water. So this constant constant rubbing of the hands will remove the notorious microorganisms from your hands. So hand wash by constant rubbing. There are 5 moments of hand hygiene which is to be followed. The 5 moments are, that is before you touch a patient. Before you touch a patient, one, you have to do a hand hygiene. Or second is before any aseptic procedures. Third, when you come into contact with any body fluids. Next moment of hand hygiene is after any procedures. Then fifth is when you come into contact with the surroundings of the patient. So during these occasions, a hand hygiene is a must. And there are different steps for hand hygiene, which will be shown by certain videos, following videos. That is, there are different steps. This is done in order to see that the disinfectant or the soap solution, whatever is being used, it reaches all the parts of your hands and it is clean. So first step is the palm to palm, wherein you have to take a handful of the soap solution or hand rub, and first step is palm to palm. Then the right hand over the other uh, between the fingers. So each step will take at least 5 seconds and 5 seconds, so that hand wash is done say for 40 to 60 seconds and hand rub 20 to 40 seconds. So this is the time taken for hand wash or hand rub. So first step is hand movement, palm to palm. Second is this. Again, each in between inter fingers. Third is between the knuckles, so that the thumb moves over the knuckles and the knuckles are clean. Then the thumb is left, so catch hold of the thumb. So to and fro movements, I told you 5 seconds each. Then next is the nails, the fingertips. One side, this is the rotation of the nail tips, each taking 5 seconds, 5 seconds each. So this will be the moments of or the method of hand wash or hand rub. Okay, so first is palm to palm and hands over, then the knuckles, then the thumb, then finally the nails. Okay, so we can have many charts put up in order to follow each step of hand washing. So and when you use a hand rub, see that the hand rub does contain enough constituents, that is a chlorhexidine. It should contain a chlorhexidine. It should contain 70 to 80% alcohol. Then the glycerin, that which will prevent drying of the hands if not used, if not the content of glycerin. So this content, make sure that these contents are there in a hand rub that you use. Okay. So whenever you happen to touch or come into contact with any of the infectious agent, do a hand wash where it is indicated. Also, hand wash is indicated where you come into contact with spore bearing bacteria. That means there is a sturdy bacteria which is Clostridium difficile containing spore bearing bacteria which causes diarrhea in individuals, patients. So in spore bearing bacteria, when you come across treating patients with diarrhea, you have to wash your hands with soap and water. So in between examining patients, you can use a hand rub. That is in an ICU. So each bed should contain a hand rub, which will help the clinician or the healthcare worker to use in between. So that's important of hand washing or hand rub, usage of hand rub. And remember the 5 moments of hand. I told you initially that is irrespective of the infectious state of the patient, every patient or every person you care for in the hospital is to be considered as infectious. And whenever during this COVID scenario, during this pandemic, we have to consider each and everything as infectious when you come to hospital or when you are caring for a patient. So surroundings of the patient, that is the case sheet of the patient, the bedside, bed railings, wherever you come into contact, all are infectious. So you have to use a hand rub or a hand wash. So that's about the hand wash. So first and foremost in standard precautions is the hand hygiene. Second is proper usage of personal protective equipment. So during this video, I'll be a lecture class, just the basic information about just standard precautions one by one. And later on, a video will be shown to you, showing the procedures of usage of PPE and later the charts of hand wash. Okay, so just in brief, the for wearing the PPE, you say donning. For removal of the PPE, you say doffing. So personal protective equipment, proper usage of personal protective equipment is to be understood by each and every healthcare worker. That means there is a sequence of donning this PPE. That is, it is not just wearing any of the equipments, just a mask first or the goggles first or it is the gown first. It is not like that. There is a sequence for each of the equipments that you use. So when COVID patients are admitted in the ward, you have to attend the COVID patient. For each one of us, or for each hospitals, for each institution, we have an institutional policy. There is an institution policy. According to that, we care for the patients in the ward. That is actually CDC has given now PPE. Gown will do rather than a PPE, a proper fitting mask with a face shield. But in our institution, we insist on donning the PPE while caring for a COVID positive patient. Okay, so it is always better taking care of yourself, and it was initially it is caring for the patients. Okay, even us, but now there should be much care for the healthcare worker also, because if only the healthcare worker is fit enough, only then he can care for the patients further, isn't it? So the proper PPE has to be done while caring for the patient. So I told you there is a sequence. So in order to don the PPE, first and foremost thing that you have to do, there is a ideal PPE room, donning room or the doffing room. Doffing room is situated far away from the doffing room. So in a donning room, when you, as a healthcare worker, when you enter the donning room, you have to have sufficient food, water. You must have used your washroom, etc. Because you have to get into the PPE, don the PPE, say for work, say at least for 4 hours or 6 hours. It may not take 8 hours. It is so, it is, I don't think it is that easy. So say for 4 or to 6 hours, when you don this PPE, you must have enough food and water, everything set, and then there should be a proper stool for the patient person to sit over it and to don the PP. So first thing that you do is you have to wash your hands with soap and water, and first you have to wear your leggings. There should not be any, the dress that you wear inside should be a comfortable one and not a dizzy one, which will give you discomfort. No. So a comfortable wear has to be put on, and then donning the PP according to the chart put up there. That means you have the leggings first. See that the size of the PPE is correct fitting for your size, the one which is required. Okay. So the leggings, then the overall, the mask, the goggles, and the head car, the face shield, a face shield. So when you wear the mask, about the mask that you wear, there are different types of masks. That is the face, the surgical mask, the N95 mask, the cloth mask, and M3 mask, 3M mask. There are different types of masks available. So these masks are used for, in order to prevent the airborne infection or the droplet infections. So second is proper use of PPE. Third is safe disposal of needles and sharps. Fourth that we have is proper cleaning of the environment and the use of medical equipments. Fifth that we have is the biomedical waste management, proper biomedical waste management. In spite of all the standard precautions, we have the 3 transmission-based precautions. Transmission-based precautions means in order to prevent infections via the transmission of organisms. That is, one is contact-based precaution, second, airborne, third, droplet. So these are the transmission-based precautions. About the personal protective equipments, yes. So ideally, when a healthcare worker works, when he works in a hospital, we should know about an epidemiological triangle of any healthcare associated infections. That is, there is a host. Host could be a patient or a healthcare worker. There is a microbial agent and a hospital environment. So the first thing I told you, it is the hand hygiene. Second is proper use of personal protective equipment. Third is the uses of sharps, proper disposal of, use and safe disposal of sharps. Fourth is the environmental cleaning and disinfection of the environment. That is why the third, in an epidemiological triangle, the first is there should be a patient, there should be a host, there should be a microbial agent, and a hospital environment. So these three things are interconnected. Host can be a patient or a healthcare worker. Then the microbial agent, which we fear, that is now it is the COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2. The hospital environment also is to be taken care of. Clean hospital environment. So for cleaning of the hospital environment, we use the bleach solution. Now it is the hypochlorite solution that is being used by the healthcare worker. Whenever there is a blood spill or anything, or any into the environment, cleaning of the environment is a must. So when we clean the blood spills, first of all, wear gloves and put an absorbent material on the spillage area. The area has to be flooded with 10% sodium hypochlorite solution, and it should be left for say 20 to 30 minutes. So, and you can put up a wet board there. That is for caution. Now place the absorbent material in the biohazard bag, which is meant for infectious waste. Then, so this disinfectant acts say for 20 to 30 minutes for in the area, and then reapply the disinfectant solution to all the exposed surfaces. Then later on, thorough wash of the area with soap and water is to be done. So in order to get rid of all the microorganisms, cleaning of the environment is a must. So now here in COVID-19, dreaded this virus, we have to use the saying is the usage of bleach solution, that is hypochlorite solution has to be used, which is a freshly prepared one. Freshly prepared bleach solution has to be used for cleaning all the areas. Okay, so now let's talk about the transmission-based precautions. So transmission-based precautions, I told you the contact precaution, that is whenever you come into contact with any surface or any environment of the in and around the patient, contact precaution has to be taken. That's why you're using the gloves, etc. Then about the mask. So next is droplet or airborne. And this has to be used empirically according to the clinical syndrome. So when we say droplet, now you know different studies says that the COVID-19 virus, this SARS-CoV-2 virus could be airborne. So now let's see what's the difference between an airborne and a droplet. Droplet means where the particle size, the teaching is it is more than 5 microns in size. The infectious particle is more than 5 micrometer in size. It travels say for 1 to 2 meters distance and drops off. Travels a short distance because it is heavy, more than 5 to 10 microns. Whereas airborne transmission, the particle size is very small. It is less than that 5. So it is aerosols are dispersed and it travels a long distance. That is why now we are insisting each and every one of us have to maintain social distancing, say at least for 2 meters distant. There should not be any crowd. That is what now we are, whether to go into a lockdown or not, in order to prevent close contact, that is crowded places is avoided. That is we are shutting down all the malls, cinema theaters, etc. You can imagine how powerful this small creature is, which has power to close up all the bring such a drastic or dramatic change in the humankind. We have brought about great many changes in our lives. That is, it has totally disrupted our daily chores. So transmission-based precautions. So examples for droplet infections are, we can say diphtheria or Bordetella. That is a different virus bacteria. Diphtheria, Bordetella. Then certain viruses like influenza, adenovirus, rhinovirus, etc. So in such cases, you have to think about all the standard precautions. Put the patient into a single room, cohorting, make the patient wear a surgical mask. So now about mask, the different kinds of mask. That is in this COVID, when in COVID ICU, when you care for the COVID patients, the best mask is the N95 mask. N95 mask, the proper wearing of the mask is that first the nose clip has to be secured and it has to be closely adhered to your nose and the mouth. The lower string has to be put first, then the upper string. See that do a blow test. Blow test is done to see whether your mask is completely fit onto your nose, covers the face and the mouth taut. That means this will, and you have to blow and see if there is any escape of air between the mask and your body. So the mask should be completely airtight. And fogging of the glasses should not occur. That is why it should be placed over the mask. The glasses have to be placed over the mask. Then you have the surgical mask. When you wear the surgical mask, see that the fold that you see, fold is facing downwards. And this mask has got a 3-layer. One is the inner layer, then the middle layer, the outer layer. And this mask has to be, and it should not be worn for prolonged period. It has to be removed when it is soiled or wet, etc. The mask has to be removed, and the outer surface of the mask should not be touched with your hands, because the outer surface of the mask is fully contaminated. And never wash your mask and reuse them, because washing will not prevent your, or will not serve the purpose of prevention of the entry of the organism. And it does not, it is not only the pore size, but it is the electrostatic force of the layer inside the mask, which will prevent the particle, which will prevent the microorganism to prevent into the nostrils or the mouth. So each act that you do, when you speak or when you cough or when you sneeze, there are a lot of particles emanated into the atmosphere. And in order to prevent that, you're using the mask. The cloth mask will only give you a 50% protection. It is not of that use. And double masking, now CDC has come out, has come with idea of double masking, which will protect you more. So when you use double mask, see that, and it is said you can use a knot for the mask that you wear, but make sure there is no open space. Open space when you wear your mask, make the areas taut around your nose and the mouth. There should not be any escape of air after you put on your mask. That should be well clear. Okay. Now, when you remove of the mask, the outer or the first layer of the mask should not be removed first. The lowest ring has to be removed first, then the outer ring, outer sling. That is because if you remove the outer or the upper string first, this mask will hang onto your face, onto your body, and it will contaminate your body. So outer surface of any PP, that is be it the mask, goggles, or the overall, it is all contaminated. That is why while doffing, you have to be with utmost care. It has to be doffing has to be done with utmost care, because you should not come into contact with the outer surface of the gown. It has to be removed with inside out, making into a roll, small roll, and it has to be disposed into a yellow bin. Now, all the COVID waste, that is the use overall mask, goggles, etc., has to be disposed into a yellow bin together, and it will be carried by the image. Images IMA goes eco-friendly. IMA image is IMA GE. IMA goes eco-friendly. So if not in a COVID area, the other areas there where you work in, there the waste has to be segregated. That is why biomedical waste management is very important. The area where you work, and segregation has to be done then and there itself. The area, the generation of waste has to be done at the, segregation of the waste has to be done at the generation area itself. Where you generate the waste, there itself you have to segregate. Suppose you have used the cotton, you have used bandage, if you use gloves, it has to be separately put into separate bins. That is why WHO has insisted on usage of different color bins. We have different color bins. That is the yellow bin for all non-plastic waste. That is cotton, bandage, all non-plastic is put into yellow bin. There is a red bin which is used for all plastic waste. That is the catheter which you use, the gloves, all plastic waste has to be put into red bin. Then all the sharps that you use, the needles, sharps, all these has to be put into a white, sturdy, transparent, leak-proof containers. This has to be put into white, transparent bins. The needles. Then the glass waste has to be put into blue containers. So we have a chart for that. Depending on the color code, you have to segregate each waste that you generate when you work in a hospital, when you work in a care area. So waste segregation is important because when you because this has to be carried by, this has to be taken by the image, and they take it only when it is segregated, and only then it will be shredded or autoclaved differently. Certain waste are recycled, certain waste are dumped, put into a pit, etc. So depending on the types of the waste, they are segregated into different bins. And needle stick injuries may occur when these needles are put along with cotton pad, etc. So needle stick injuries may occur to healthcare workers, and it is always the cleaning staff who gets the needle stick injury. So needles have to be put into a separate white bin. That is what I told you, white transparent bin. So why we dread this needle stick injuries? Because needle stick injuries may lead to emanating of blood, and we have to be careful about the bloodborne pathogens. Bloodborne pathogens are the HIV, human immune deficiency viruses, the hepatitis B viruses, hepatitis C virus. All these viruses are dreaded viruses which we fear a lot. So these some of them may lead to even cancerous states, hepatocellular carcinoma. So see that needle stick injury should not occur, and they have to be discarded properly into separate waste bins. So all of us have to be vaccinated when you come to work into this healthcare areas, and hepatitis B vaccination you should have had, and hope all of you must have had your COVID vaccination done, and see that all the standard precautions are strictly followed, and this infection prevention and control activities, or the prevention activities, this has to be followed throughout your life. This has to be taken care, or this has to be given importance throughout your life. Any healthcare worker has to remember all the components in a standard precaution, and it has to be followed by all the healthcare workers throughout their life, and it has to be part and parcel of their activities. And hopefully all the, be it a nurse or be it a cleaning staff, be it a pharmacist or a engineer, anyone working in the doctor, anyone working in the hospital care setup, healthcare settings, have to follow the standard precautions in order to prevent transmission of infection, or in order to acquire any sort of infection. So thank you all of you. Please take care of yourself, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful and informative session. Thank you so much for sparing time from your busy schedule and joining us here today. Thank you so much. We genuinely hope that the session was useful to everyone who heard it in one way or the other. Until the next section, thank you all and have a nice day. Thank you, ma'am.